Yeah, and I guess, before we dive into the full video, we've been doing this 6, 7 weeks now. What are we supposed to say? It's like smash the like button, hit share. What's
Absolutely.
the protocol?
Yeah, you're supposed to say, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, send this to somebody who might be interested in the releases we have coming up this week, and let us know what you're most looking forward to in this week's releases.
Yeah, that's the perfect lead in. We'll get good at this at some point, I think.
That's right. We hope so.
Welcome everyone to the next Seelbach Week in Review video. We're talking about the week of October 26th. What I am kind of calling the homegrown week, and you'll kind of see the trend as we go through. But we'll dive on in. But as always, Brian, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into these releases.
It is, we'll say it. It's got to be. We're just keeping the trend going. It's a fun week. It's a somewhat packed week, maybe not as packed, but some heavy hitters in here and some really just fun, cool releases that I think we have a big story to tell with them and really a big connection as well. And it's kind of the idea for calling it the homegrown or homespun week.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything. I didn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly an alley oop there. So
That was
yes,
not the easy.
I concur.
I
What was
thought
that
you were
movie?
going to
I
say
concur.
something like, yeah,
Okay, I'll punch
I
it.
really
I'll
like
punch in this. I'll punch in this way. That's a really soft way, Blake, to say there's another Seelbach's Private Reserve release this week. But we'll take it.
It's
We'll
not
take it.
just about the Seelbach Private Reserve. We're not going to lead with that, but the surprise is ruined. There is another Seelbach Private Reserve coming this week. But yeah, let's jump in. So first thing we have this week, Bardstown Bourbon Company. We have two new single barrel bourbons from them. If you're unfamiliar with Bardstown, just one of the first to really come on board and say, hey, we're going to have our own brands. We're going to do a lot of contract distilling. They're in one umbrella under Lofted Spirits with Green River and just cranking out some of our favorite bourbon. Some of the hotter releases we've had on Seelbach between the Discovery, the Ferran collab. And these single barrels always do really well. And these were fun ones because pretty much or most of our Seelbach team was in Bardstown to do these barrel picks. It was a marathon of a barrel tasting, but Vince and the team over at Bardstown, they do an incredible job of barrel picks. And we came out with two really great barrels. Do you remember between the two if you had a favorite? I do have the stats on these.
Yeah, I
Let
need
me pull
to.
those
I'd have
up.
to look it up. So if you have it, if you recall, so I don't remember if we talked about the Green River on one of these videos. We probably did because I think we talked about the weeded a little bit. But if you remember that story, if we did talk about it, this was the pick where I was ganged up on and I lost all of my favorite barrels except for that weeded Green River barrel. Which is fine because they were all really good barrels to pull from anyway. But like you said, I mean, it was a marathon. I think we went in just thinking, I went in at least thinking we were going to do a Bardstown pick, a Green River pick. And it's like, all right, you got a couple of Bardstowns. You got Bardstown Rye. You've got Green River. You've got Green River Weeded. And I think I was like, oh my gosh. And then we had, again, like you said, the whole team. We had some of our folks out of Chicago in. We had some of the folks from Jacksonville. Dee was in. So we had everybody there. By the time we got to Buzzard's Roost, and you all did hear us talk about that, we had lost our folks from Chicago. They had already gone back. So this was us just warming up, getting started, picking some barrels together. So I think they're going to be good no matter what. But which ones they were, I do forget.
Yeah, so this would be Seelbach's pick 4 and 5. We're kind of keeping the consecutive count going on these, just the number of picks we do from Bardstown. So it's the 36% rye bourbon. So it's 60, 36, 4. Very popular mash bill. MGP has a lot of that. And they're a little over 6 years old, about 6 years, 2 months. I think what's fun between 4 and 5 is they're essentially sister barrels, distilled on the same day, both aged in Rickhouse E Floor 1. And a lot of times with the Rickhouse aging, it may not always mean something, but it can at times. If you're super high up, it's going to be hotter. If you're lower, it's going to be a little bit cooler, so a little more mellow aging. And I think that showed through in these bourbons. Even at the proof that they're at, they have like this mellow sounds bad because it is higher proof, but just really well-rounded bourbon notes. Like obviously you get some of the spice, but it just showcases to me what I love about Bardstown. I think they're putting out some incredible bourbon, and I'm excited for these to be on the site.
Absolutely. A couple of notes that I had even just from that pick day, because again, they were tough to pick from, and we had cherry and candies, we had stewed peaches, we had bruleed peaches. We moved to one of them. I don't remember if it's one of the ones we picked, but it had like a strawberry basil note that was really interesting. And then again, here another comment about really pretty candied sweetness. Another one decadent and layered. Another one rich and deep. I mean, citrus sugars and vanilla. I mean, they were all super tasty barrels, so I don't think you're going to go wrong. I mean, you all will be able to see the tasting notes by the time you all see this video, I would assume. But if not, they would come soon after that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the bruleed peaches made it. I love that note in bourbon. Anything that's kind of like candied and fruity, dried fruit notes, I'm always gonna lean towards that. And I don't want to say I voted against you with basil strawberry, but I'm like, I don't want sorbet,
That's okay. That was not one of the
it was a good
barrels that I
barrel.
had marks
Good barrel.
on. That's why I
Yeah.
can't remember if it's one that we ended up with or not.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
I think it was really close. Anyway, some of these barrels I even made mentions like these were really close between these two. So I think that we're gonna run into some good barrels. I am curious if that strawberry, or excuse me, the orange creamsicle bruleed peach one was one of the ones that made it. So I'm excited to dive into those.
Yeah, should be a good release. And then next up, another favorite, another one that we have been with from the start, which is Field of Dreams. Most well known for their bourbon or baseball themed bourbon, corn that was grown on the actual lot where they filmed the movie Field of Dreams, and then they turned that into bourbon. This one is really cool. So this one's the one they're calling the All-Star Series. So they sourced, I should say, whiskey from I believe it's 21 major cities with baseball teams. And so it's everything from, it's predominantly bourbon, but there's stuff from Arizona single malt. There's Canadian whiskey in there for the Blue Jays. There's, ASW has some bourbon in there. So it's really from all over. And it is the biggest blend of whiskey that's ever been produced. The most components in a whiskey. And kind of talking with their team, it's like, how do you even start to blend it? He's like, I don't want to even start to explain the amount of vials that I have in my house trying to get this blend together. He's like, you start with so many components to start with, and you start with so many components, and then just to get everything in there with the ratios and everything else, it gets tricky. So it's an exciting one and really tasty in the end. But, baseball, bourbon, I think bringing in all the teams, calling it the All-Star Series, really fun one. Packaging looks great on this one. So always a fan favorite, and just another one of those, what we like to call Seelbach's homegrown, since they've been with us since the start.
Yeah, I was just gonna punch in and say I think they actually got up to 30 distillery. I just say that. Is that okay? So we can kind of leave what we said before. There's tons of things with this. These are always super popular releases. I think they actually ended up getting up to 30 different places or 30 different whiskeys for this one on the bottle. Let me look at what that picture is real quick. Yeah, 30 distilleries, one bottle. Man, Sean Josephs would never like that blending.
I mean, that's a task. That's a task in itself, just even make a label fitting all of the different components.
But also a really cool opportunity that
kudos to
you
them.
never get a chance to try. So that's pretty neat in and of itself. And I think folks may have heard us talk about this before. I think that it got pushed. So if you remember hearing us talk about it before, you didn't miss it. The release just got pushed. So I'm excited to see that come out, especially while we have some World Series play going on. And yeah.
Should be another great release. And then next up, one, I go more in depth to the story of what this bottle is in the email, but it's one that Mike Veach got together with Bill Thomas from Jack Rose. Mike Veach is a famous whiskey writer. He's been around for forever. He's been doing this way before it was, really cool and everywhere, and just has always had great information. Obviously, Bill running Jack Rose probably the best whiskey bar in the country, or one of the best, probably top three if you don't want to give him the top spot. And really just a guy who I think is way more influential in what bourbon is today than people realize. And this is a really cool one to me because I can remember Mike was documenting on his blog this whole process. It wasn't called Fountain Run at the time. It was just Bill and Mike's adventure, and talking about how he found a recipe, or was talking to somebody at his granddad's or at his dad's funeral about this. Shoot, what is it? Is it hickory corn? Does it say on there? We can cut this
hickory
part out.
cane white corn.
So talking with some of his dad's friends about this hickory cane white corn that was used mainly by moonshiners and stuff, and had the idea of like, wow, this would be really cool to put together. Him and Bill connected. They went to Kentucky Artisan Distillery. They got these barrels laid down. And so it's a one-of-one project. I asked Bill when batch 2 would be coming out if this one does well. And he's like, well, we'd have to wait another 7 years. So it's one where the mash bill, like if you're into craft distilling, if you're into whiskey history, if you're into good bourbon, if you're into all of those things combined into one, I think this is the bottle. And it's, I can, like I was saying when I was reading this article, it just was clicking with me of like, you can do this kind of stuff. Like you can just go and make your own bourbon. You can have your own release. Like, and that was really got my wheels spinning. And here we are 7-8 years later. It's like, now we're doing Seelbach's private reserve releases. We're doing Bikey's Blue. We're doing all these different things. And I really feel like that was part of the inspiration for me of saying like, yeah, the bourbon world is what you want to make it. Like if you have people interested, if you could tell a story, you can get cool products in front of them. And you had a chance to try this one, Brian. What were your initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, and also just to mention, because I know there's people who go after this sort of stuff, this is a 7-year bottled and bond product. I think that this has got a really interesting flavor profile, whether it comes from that hickory cane white corn, whether it comes from the chocolate malt. I think that if you're a fan of Detling, if you're a fan of Kings County to some extent, but it's not necessarily like that chocolatey, I think there's going to be a lot of things that you like. It's got a lot of custardiness. I'm trying to remember who else does that, because I feel like we talked about somebody recently, but like in the same veins as like the Jimmy Reds, but not as intense. But if you want one that's got just a ton of really interesting perfume-like qualities, almost Armagnac, because it's got a lot of like thickness that you can tell on the nose. There's like a pretty bouquet, but there's also these deep sugary flavors. I feel like you get a lot on the nose, but then on the palate, it goes, like I said, into some of those chocolates and some of the raisins, so like the dark fruits, the stewed fruits, into some of the chocolate. And then it has this really interesting wood-like finish that, when I was telling you before recording, reminds me more of like the Hulling Station or a Hulling Station wheat whiskey, that's kind of one of my guilty pleasures. I don't really go to it all that often, but has a really interesting flavor profile that just kind of reminds me of kind of damp old rickhouse kind of vibes, and that comes out in kind of the long linger. So it's a really interesting bottle, and I think that it's going to be, for folks who like the brands that I had mentioned, folks who like kind of a craft whiskey flavor, but I don't mean that in a, I don't know. Take it however you want. More like the brands that I talked about. I think it's going to have a
Not
really,
like a
really
youthful,
fun profile.
They're not rolling out something that's a year and a half old in a
Right.
10-gallon barrel. And I think most people are starting to realize that's not what craft whiskey is. So yeah, a cool release for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, not like we are saving the best for last, but one I am also very excited about is the return of the Seelbach's 10-year double oaked. You may remember we did the first version of it. Here we can do, side by side pictures.
Oh, yours is much, much lower than mine is. I
Yeah,
was shooting photos, so I don't have it open yet.
To show you, I do get high on my own supply sometimes, and it's one where I love the addition of double oak into bourbon, especially when it's a really well-made barrel, especially when it's air-dried staves for an extended period of time. And so that's what we did here. We took a lot of MGP barrels. It was the 21% rye. They were about, I want to say 9.5 years old at the time. We put those into new Char3 toasted French oak barrels. French oak's popping up a lot more just because I think it's a great flavor profile. Finished, which was that 13-month in French oak. And then the 24% is 2 other barrels of unfinished bourbon. One of those is a 36% rye from MGP. It was 11 years, 9 months. And then 21% bourbon, which was 10 years, 10 months. So actually, both of those had different components that they brought in. The 10-year unfinished was higher in proof, kind of bumped it up a little bit. I think that really helps balance out some of the French oak. And then the 11-year was just a barrel that I loved. It was actually a little bit lower proof, but it just brought in all this like sweet dried fruit, a little bit of those candy notes. And the end was very decadent. It's very delicious. I mean, it's hard to say like, oh, the Seelbach bottle is delicious. You know, of course you're going to say that, but I am really happy with how this one turned out. And it's just another exercise in blending for us where you get these components, and once you harvest the barrels, there's still work to do. You know, I know we talked with Sean from Pinhook about how they blend, and you can do whatever you want in small sample bottles and everything. But until you harvest those barrels, you find out the actual amounts, you find out how everything works together. You know, this one sat in a tote for a little while because I think with the tannins that come in from the French oak, it all just needs time to mingle. You know, I don't want to say it's like cathedral-esque because it doesn't have all of those components, but 13 months in French oak definitely brings in a lot of complexity, and I'm excited for this one. Yeah, and you haven't tried it. You know, you've got your bottle, but you haven't tried it. So
I haven't. You want me to try it right now?
I mean, why not? We could go live tasting of it, and if he makes a bad face, we just cut the video off early.
That's right. Remind me. It was 2 years ago, right, when you had the last double oaked? It wasn't last year, right?
No, so it was last June or July-ish, and so that one was a little bit different because that one brought in.
Look at that easy tear wax
easy
right
wax. There. You know, shout out to Reed Wax because terrible wax, like TERRIBLE, terrible wax, or no. Yeah, not TEAR. It makes it so much easier. And that was definitely one of the feedback notes we got from people of like having to bring out a chainsaw to open up a Seelbach Private Reserve bottle. But yeah, the first one we did was Kentucky bourbon. It was in there about the same amount of time into secondary oak, but it was 2 different types of oak. So a very different bourbon. I feel like, you know, comparing them side by side, they're just vastly different. It's different distilleries, it's different mash bills, different types of oak. So that for this, I wanted to bring something a little bit different. And honestly, it's like, what am I drinking that I'm really enjoying? Let's start playing around with that. So that was the initial idea. And 2 of these barrels were actually in what I call the hot box at the warehouse section. It's metal, stays really hot, higher humidity, so you get a ton of that oak interaction, and it also it's very humid, so it starts to lower the proof and soften things up a bit as well.
Yeah, I think it hits you right away with a lot of the dark fruits, but they're not. It's hard to describe. Sometimes when I run into the dark fruits, like the really dried dark fruits, or it's very fruity, it's not either of those two. It's kind of, you just notice some pleasing, creamy, dark fruits right away. And then I generally would expect with a double oaked, you get like a huge wave of what I call like double oakedness, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of the blend, because of the extra age of the double oaks, combination of them, but I feel like it's very deep without necessarily having all of the kind of toasty, double oaked kind of thing kind of punching you in the face. But then you do notice that kind of French oak spice in the finish, but it's not. Sometimes when you run into stuff that I feel like is French oak finished, I noticed it like in makers and some other things too, where you get a lot of the spice. It's very warming, so you get a lot of the kind of cinnamon type notes and stuff. They come forward a little bit more. this doesn't come forward all that much, but you can tell that it's got that lane of that that French oak type profile. It's all just really cohesive, I should say. So I'm not going to praise the bottle, but I will tell you it's very cohesive. And
I'll give honest notes, and I won't. Yeah,
yeah, it drinks really, really well. These are the bottles. What do we have recently? I think the Pinhook was kind of like this too, where if you're going to give me a 10-year bourbon, I don't need it to necessarily be this big, loud thing. I kind of like bottles like this, like the Pinhook, where it's like, this is an easy, creamy, like nuanced, aged pour. And I think that the fact that it has the French oak, the fact that it has the double oaked are noticeable in there too. But if you didn't tell somebody that, I think they'd still be able to drink it and be like, well, yeah, that's a pretty good bourbon.
yeah. No, and that's the goal. And with the toasting and charred French oak, you're just bringing a lot more like caramelized sugars. The Lingen compounds or whatever it's called that's in the oak. So some of those roastier notes. Almost like a buttered toffee type of thing. And it is one where I do say it's like, I always tell people drink it however you want it. With this, I feel like it was designed to be drunk at cask strength. It's 113.3 proof. So it's not something that just blows the palate out initially, and there's enough sweetness to balance everything out. And French oak's always very interesting, even testing some proofing, like it takes a long time to settle. So if you do add water to it, it takes some time for everything to it releases some volatile compounds when you add water. So you almost have to let it sit for longer than you would expect once you start to add water. But, designed to be drunk at cask strength, designed not to just be some hazmat bomb that blows the palate out, but to be super flavorful throughout, like from nose to finish, just a lot of flavor and kind of more subtle nuance going on.
Yeah, I look forward to that one opening up.
Should be a fun one. And we don't have a ton of it, I guess I should say too. But bad part about aging in Florida at times is yields aren't always what you want them to be. But yeah, so that'll be on Friday at noon. Really just to round out the week of homegrown releases. So excited for another week.
I feel like we got to at least mention, because for those who watch, if they are pro members, they already know. But the last couple of weeks, we've been doing some Friday lotteries also for the pro members. And I felt like it just might be worth mentioning for a couple of reasons. We recently redid the website. If you guys have checked it out, let us know your thoughts down in the comments. But then we've added a new tier aside from pro, which is the plus, right? So we know that we got some folks who are into pro. There's some folks who, when that's closed down, they don't have a place to necessarily go. But we also know there's folks who do order throughout the year from Seelbach, and so we wanted to open up another tier that didn't have open and close dates, but it was solely on shipping. Right? It's being able to get the free shipping all year long, and that's going to be the plus program. But I wanted to quickly mention that, but then talk about for the pro that we've been doing, because we've been trying to figure out ways so we can keep leaning into pro. And some of people were asking about our rare characters, so we have had some rare character bottles that we've been running lotteries for.
We had some found north.
We've got. Well, what do you want me to do? Like, people, I mean, it would probably already be gone by now, but when we last did our short barrel, it's been a little bit of a break since we had some of our other short barrels earlier this year, but we had this one. It was almost 13 year. It's 13 year now. Hazmat rye. We wanted to keep kind of letting it coast, and we tried to figure out how do you take a barrel that's this intense and get it to more people. So we did these 375s of them. So 375 lottery for this will have already gone by the time you watch this video, but that's another one that we've had for that. Is there a different Easter egg that you were
No, that was the one. I mean, there's several things coming. If you're a pro member watching this, just still be looking out to your email Friday, Saturday. We don't close those lotteries down in like an hour. But a lot of fun stuff coming. But I do think, as we try to just continue to give pro members as much value and access to really cool things that probably won't make it on the full site, I think the Plus is a great option, you know, because like you said, it's Pro's not always open, but some people, they just want the free shipping. And so we're rolling that out, doing something cool where it's like, hey, if you don't get the value, we'll just credit you with a gift card or store credit on Seelbach for whatever the difference is. So, you know, if you only ship 4 times in the year, it's $100. You just get a $50 credit to your account. So just trying to think of good ways where we can keep people engaged, keep people happy and like what they're buying, and make it easy access to craft spirits. You know, at the end of the day, it's just about getting good whiskey to people, and showcasing these brands and distilleries as best we can. And it's just another evolution in that process. So I'm excited to see it roll out. And yeah, obviously just a lot more coming on the pro side as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, that wraps us up for this week of the Seelbach Weekly Review. So let us know if you have questions. Let us know what products you're most excited about. Are we at, you know, we've probably done this 5-6 weeks. Do we say like smash the like button and share? So I don't know. Every YouTube video or Instagram reel I see, that's what they do. So maybe we're
I think they normally say it before they have people watching 25 minutes. If somebody's already watched 25 minutes in, I would like to hope that they've smashed the subscribe button. But
that is true. Yeah.
But do it anyway. Smash the subscribe button. Like that.
Yeah, we can make this a part of the lead-in. Editing is an amazing tool. So, yeah, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Cheers, everybody. Right. Do you want to do a quick punch-in that we could punch towards the beginning and say, before we dive into this week, go ahead, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, let us know what you're most looking forward to this week.
Yep.
I could do that if you want, or do you want to do it?
I was going to say, I'll probably do about that same thing that I just did of like kind of lean it over to you of like, oh, what are we supposed to say?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.